this book that doesn't look like a real book right now, but if you pre-order it at the link, I promise you will get an actual real whole ass book that's, you know, bound and everything. So I'm in my living room, and I have like 3 of my housemates that came down to watch, so I have somebody to like do my poems to, so I'm not really staring at the screen. So.
Oh my God, live audience!
Yeah, so I got a live audience, which is great. Yeah, they're gonna listen to my poems and hopefully laugh at all my jokes too, right? Right?
Oh my God! Oh, shiver my timbers.
Cool. Okay. So the first poem that I'm gonna do is about Chuck E. Cheese, because he's a personal hero of mine. Chuck E. Cheese, you know his name, not his story. Or perhaps you know not his name at all. You see, Chuck E. Cheese is actually short for Charles Entertainment Cheese, and he has not just a full legal name, but a dark origin story. So Charles, and this is true, like verified Chuck E. Cheese canon, never knew his parents. Though we can assume they were also anthropomorphic rodents, there's no record of his birth to confirm this. His earliest memories are of the austere hallways of St. Marinera's orphanage, year after year, watching children with birth certificates and no whiskers blow out the candles on their birthday cakes while Charles sang along, never daring to speak to existence the deepest, most desperate desire of his little rat heart to one day know his birthday so that he too might have something to celebrate. Now, I like to think, and clearly I've spent way longer thinking about this than any adult ever needs to, that in his youth, Charles showed a certain aptitude for gambling. Nurtured in the buzzing darkness of hole-in-the-wall taverns and seedy motels, games of poker and hold'em, where money changed hands under the tables of smoke-filled back rooms, I like to think this was how, on what he guessed was close to his 18th birthday, Charles bought a one-way ticket to the big city, leaving St. Marinera's behind in a flick of his bald tail, never looking back. They say his likeness roams the halls of rat casinos for children worldwide who trade their victories for holographic stickers and jars of Play-Doh where, it is said, to this day, everything is fucking sticky. And every day is someone's birthday. Now, I like to think that every night when the lights go down at Chuck E. Cheese, after the animatronic band shudders to stillness, after the last sugar-crashing child sputters out the door like an untied balloon, Charles, finally alone, wipes the top layer of stick from the corner table, draws from his pocket what is left of a single striped candle, now burned so small he has to take care not to singe his furry fingers, to light it. Is Chuck E. Cheese a hero? Or simply a lonely rat clinging to the last vestiges of a scarred childhood he never truly had? Did he want every child to have a birthday party, or did he want to be the one to throw it for them, and does the difference matter? Truest measure of being is not in what you've had, but what you've lost. Play-Doh is always shaped like missing hands. Every teacher was once taught they were unteachable. It's easy to give advice if you're not using it yourself. It's easy to make people laugh if you're using it for yourself, which is to say for the release of crying without the tears. Adulthood is just another way to pretend you've outgrown pretending. Giving what you never had is just another way of pretending it was yours in the first place. An origin story is both the Play-Doh and the hands. I like to think the lights go down at Chuck E. Cheese after Charles wipes the stick off the corner table, draws from his shirt pocket what is left of a single striped candle burned so small he has to take care not to singe his furry fingers as he lights it and sings to no one. Happy birthday, dear Charles. Happy birthday to me. Woo! Thank you. I did that one from memory, so I repeated a few lines in there, but you get the gist. There's a line in there. Every teacher was once taught they were unteachable. So the next poem that I'm going to do for you is based off of that. This is, I guess you could say, kind of my origin story as a teacher. So when there's not a global pandemic, I teach art to children. And yeah, they're honestly my greatest inspiration. I think art in its purest form is from children because they have no reason to create other than just to create. And I think that's really beautiful. So this is called Space Cows Struggle with Transitions to Factory Farming. Nico is 5 3/4 years old. This is an important distinction. His first week in my after-school poetry class, he writes about a space cow who swallows the moon. Second week, Nico scowls when I call his name on the roll sheet. My name is Nicholas, he says. The artist formerly known as Nico's day teacher, it turns out, has renamed him Nicholas because there's already another Nico in his class. Now he's afraid he'll get in trouble for being called by his name. My first teaching job requires an MD's signature on a negative TB test. Are you on any medication? The doctor asks. I name the pills I swallowed at breakfast. I see. Her tone grows cold, clinical, under a thin veneer of softness, like the papery examination table that moments before held my bare body. What is your diagnosis? I tell her I am unfit to supervise children. At least this must be what she hears. It doesn't matter what I say next. I'm working with Nico on a story about a spider-dinosaur hybrid. He's got big, dark eyes that light up every time he invents a new animal. But he doesn't like it when you look in them. If you do, he'll stop talking. I'm 10 years old, and Mrs. Carr makes me sit at my desk with my head down for 15 minutes when I get too excited. You're like a little butterfly, she says, and you need to learn how to be a quiet little butterfly. I ask her what a loud butterfly sounds like. She doesn't care for this question. 2 behavioral therapists shadow Nico scribbling on clipboards. He takes a Lego block and pushes it on the inside of a blue marker cap while he looks for words. Click. It sticks out both ends. He does it again. Click. The block doesn't fit. Click. Useless. Lost cause. Click. Clipboards don't care for fidgeting. Quiet hands. Click. Eyes on the teacher, Nicholas. Click, click, click. Pay attention, Nicholas. Click. They take away his marker. Quiet hands. Do you want to draw your story instead, I ask? A nod. I hand him a new marker. Clipboards fill in pages of charts with numbers while watching him work. Nico says the spider-saur has 10,000 legs all over his body. Nico knows how to count to 10,000. They do not write this down. I'm 15 years old and I don't like the blue pills or the way they make my brain spin. Clipboards name me non-compliant, oppositional to the point of pathology, willfully defiant, entitled, immature. Something takes hold in my body like an itch, a restlessness. I am kneeling in wet shards before I remember deciding to break the glass. Left clipboard asks me to stand up, takes my seat, tiny shoulders tense. He knows he is being tested. They ask questions to help us assimilate. I am dripping, shaking, bleeding, picking up the pieces of something that looks like it never fit in the first place. I catch my distorted reflection in a pinkish puddle on the tile floor, useless, lost cause. Clipboard interrupts Nico's story to ask, how would you feel if you saw a dinosaur in real life? How would you feel if you had to abandon the creature you were imagining to answer unimaginative questions, assessing your ability to imagine shit? Next class, I tell Nico, use your imagination. And he says he doesn't have one. He says, I can't hold a pencil right. The back of the classroom, a pencil scratches a clipboard. Friday, I have a talk with my director, and my classroom becomes a clipboard-free zone. I tell my poets, it's okay to move around if that's how your brain works best. It's okay if you listen better while your hands are busy. It's okay to be scared of new people. And I crawl under the desk next to his to make sure he hears. You come out when you feel safe. You speak when you are ready. You don't have to be Nicholas if you don't want to. You can be whoever you want here, but how do I teach them to be themselves in a world that takes their own name from their mouth and spits back a new one? Not fitting in is not the same as unfit, but this world would rather carve the edges off every square peg than ask itself why all the holes are round. But I will teach them that we can paint portraits of ourselves with just words, and not one of them has to be a diagnosis. You can learn all the ways that your brain will try to trick you and still trust yourself. And when it feels like this world has taken all that is left of you, I will be here to listen and understand and see you as you are. Here, we can be whoever we want. Thank you. That poem gets me emotional every time I do that. So thank you for being on that journey with me. So a lot of the poems in this book are about mental health and just experiencing, different aspects of the way that the world responds to people who don't think the way that the world tells you to. And I have decided, just because of what a weird time it is to, have a book coming out and it feels sort of icky, like with everything that's going on in the world, to be, self-promoting and profiting directly from this. So I've decided that all the money that I make off of this book is going to go to a really, really important cause that I'm gonna put the link up so y'all can read more about it, and it's in the Facebook event as well. But basically it goes towards justice for the Suleiman family, and the Suleiman family lost their son, Mubarak, to just a horrific act of injustice. And I don't want to go too much into it because it's not really my story to tell, but I hope that you can take the time to read about it and see how you can be involved. But essentially, the reason why I felt like this specifically was so important was because it's honestly like a privilege as a white person to be able to write about mental illness and be open about mental illness, especially in cases where when other people are showing the same symptoms that I have, it gets them labeled as dangerous, as a threat, and it's not okay. And so I felt like it was that anything that I do to benefit from this, I have sort of a responsibility to pay it forward, I guess. So with that said, I'm gonna do a poem. Okay, let's see. The next one that I could do. Okay, I'm gonna do this one. This is like basically the thesis of this book, I guess. This is called Theories of the Human Verse. Let's talk about quantum physics. Let's talk about things that only matter when they're measured, like particles and waves and abandonment. Let's talk about my father, a man who has on 3 occasions yelled at me for not believing that he's proud of me and said the words, "I am proud of you," on 0. Let's talk about parallel universes. Let's talk about decisions and indecisions and how each one we make or don't make splinters this cosmic now into infinite and equally probable realities. Let's talk about all these dimensions of ourselves, the ones together and the ones still searching for a love that's both salvation and ruin until we find out which. Let's talk about gravity. Let's talk about this inexplicable attraction, this magnetic madness, this need to bury every piece of myself inside you, stitch you up, and then so shut the fabric of a universe where you can never leave. Let's call that gravity. Don't call it love. Call it the intergalactic forces of shared possibility reaching, pulling lonely planets across a vacuum of uncertainty, searching for symmetry. Let's talk about nuclear fission. Let's talk about our first lesson that splitting creates unstable parts and all the ways we find not to listen, because even now, when I'm still finding fragments of myself on your shoelaces, I know that none of us are really one person. We are all entire universes. We are all concentric structures of decisions and indecisions and parallel planes of planetary possibility pressed between particles destined for collision. Let's stop calling it mental illness and start calling it extraterrestrial sensing, this ability to contain infinities of alternate selves and their alternate worlds inside the solar system of a skull. Let's talk about how I both loathed and envied your singularity of systems, the way they all revolved around a uniformity of self I have never known. Let's talk about how I tried aligning mine by joining your orbit. Let's talk about how it almost worked. Let's talk about wormholes and black holes and infinite ways to lose yourself in a timeless wasteland of what might have been. Let's talk about poetry and what a volatile science it is to expand words into worlds we will never inhabit. Let's talk about Thomas Young, first to discover light behaves differently when observed, and Galen Strawson, first to speculate consciousness itself lends matter its physical form, and finally, this poet, possibly first to extrapolate that maybe it is only our certainty in the capacity of things to remain themselves that allows them to occupy space across infinite possible realities. For instance, let's talk about yesterday over breakfast, when I asked again if you were intending to stay, and just like that, you vanished. Let's talk about entanglement, quantum or otherwise, and how in all the ways I told myself you would save me, letting me go was the last one I could ever have predicted. That's all. I got home. Oh, thank you. It's great to have a live audience. This book is sort of based off this scientific theory that reality as we know it is inherently subjective, and a lot of it deals with trauma sort of through the lens that to experience trauma is essentially to experience like a literal break from reality, because when somebody denies you your humanity, they strip away the very nature being creating the reality that you inhabit. And so these poems kind of explore like the human condition as occupying and maintaining this collective illusion of a single shared universe that we all do, while we're all simultaneously like ensconced in our own individual self-constructed universes. And to connect, with other people, one of the really beautiful things about connecting with other people is you get to see how those universes sort of line up. And I've done a lot of reading, different books and different poems kind of dealing with trauma, but a lot of it, at least a lot of what I read, was sort of about overcoming it. And this is maybe kind of a fatalistic way of looking at it, but I really don't believe that trauma is necessarily something that we overcome. And what I wanted to read that felt more authentic to my experience was kind of about making peace and learning to live in a reality that's been irreparably altered. You experience trauma, but I had never read a book like that, so I read it. And if you want to buy it, you can. And
you should. Woo-hoo!
Wow.
Thanks, live audience.
Sorry.
So yeah, that was all pretty heavy. So I'm not going to do any trauma poems tonight because I don't want to. And thank you. So the next poem that I'm going to do is actually based off of, there's been a lot of kind of discourse in different educator circles about books like The Giving Tree and The Rainbow Fish, and whether those are actually containing healthy messages for children to internalize. And I'm grateful that this conversation is beginning to happen, because I think that like being socialized, as like a female presenting person, I think we're taught so much that love and sacrifice are the same thing, and that to love somebody means just kind of carving yourself up and giving everything that you have, and that's not always like the healthiest way of navigating relationships. So I rewrote. It's like kind of half poem, half like small children's book, and it's called The Rainbow Fish Retold. So I'm gonna get my like reading posture. So long ago in the land of Palinode, that's a poetry joke, there lived a rainbow fish. Her colorful iridescent scales were coveted by every fish in the sea. One day, as she was swimming in its great blue depths, she came upon a clownfish. "Dear rainbow fish," the clownfish said, "might I have one of your scales so that I may sparkle like you?" And without thinking, the rainbow fish grabbed a scale from her side with a fin and ripped it from her body. It hurt quite a bit. The salt water stung her bra sore as the clownfish swam away, a rainbow scale now glittering bright beside its orange gills. And the rainbow fish swam on with a limp, still holding her tender, empty spot with a fin, when she came upon a piece of driftwood. And the driftwood said, "I too have loved like you did. Long ago, when I was whole, they called me the Giving Tree, and I loved a boy who sat in my shade and ate the apples that fell from my branches, and we were happy for a time. He asked for the fruit from my limbs, and I was happy to give it, for I loved nothing more than to see him smile. And when all the fruit was gone, he wanted my branches for lumber. So I gave him everything I had, and when I had nothing left, he tossed what was left of me in the sea to float and to rot." And the rainbow fish said to the driftwood, "That boy sounds like a dick." And the driftwood let out a small bark of laughter and said, "Perhaps he was, or perhaps just human. Perhaps I was so quick to give him everything he never noticed when I had nothing left. Perhaps I never believed I was wanted unless I was needed at the same time. Whatever the reason, I know better now than to drift by and let you accept the kind of love that asks you to carve yourself up, that leaves you with salt water and open wounds. So the rainbow fish thanked the driftwood for its counsel and continued on her way. Before long, she met a silver spiny fish. "Sweet rainbow fish," said he, "would you be so kind as to give me one of your scales to light my way through these dark waters?" This time, the rainbow fish said, "I'm sorry, but I can't do that for you. I know it gets dark in the depths of these waters, and I'll be a light if you need one, wherever I can. But I need to stay whole in order to do that, and I hope you understand." And the silver spiny fish said, "I love these boundaries for you. I didn't think of that before, and I'm sorry if I asked too much. It does get dark in the depths of these waters, and we all need someone by our side sometimes to be brave. You have your rainbow scales, and I have additional genes expressing light-sensitive proteins, so I can detect bioluminescence to guide us while you light the way. In fact, as a silver spiny fish, my retinas can detect up to 38 more shades of blue and green than regular ones." And the rainbow fish said, "What I think you're saying is when nights get dark, together and whole, we make more than a rainbow."
Woo!
Thanks, friends. How am I doing on time?
I have absolutely no idea, but keep going.
Sick. All right. That's what I love to hear. Okay, cool.
Probably like 2 more.
2 more? Perfect. All right, I have 2 more right here. Let's see. Okay, so this one is called "The Science of Losing Things," and this is from another one from the book. And this is about this really weird time in quarantine where, like, I swear to God, the moon just fucking vanished. And it was super weird. And yeah, I just became known to a lot of people as like the weird chick who was just up and down our street every night, like, looking for the moon. Anyway, let me tell you about the month the moon went missing. Vanished for a spell from the squat of night above the tenement stack across the street. Let me tell you about the certain archetypal energy of exposed fire escapes at twilight, calling me home like a past life lover to the blue swirl of her cigarette, elbows nest of a window ledge, an ember, an embryo, an embalming, ashes wept to dust by the dawn. I've come to both love and fear, the way sleepless nights curl back the edges of the world like rolled parchment. Telephones, wallets, sundry bits of sense swallowed by the void below. 4 weeks the sky hovered air screen gray behind buildings, husked like an empty chapstick, or so I'd imagine, though I've never kept track of one long enough to know what balm looks like when it's spent. Tell me why I was the one to go looking for the moon. A theory of quantum physics likens the observable universe to holographic projections of the mind, which if true stands to reason would be susceptible, like any simulation, to itch. No one is as sane as they think they are. At least once, we all sacrifice our senses to the altar of belief, worship our personal delusions of normalcy. How long do you think it would take the world to notice if the moon stopped appearing at night? No one is as sane as they think they are. The Jude across the street from the moonless tenement stack has smiles in his eyes and talks to James on our porch in Creole. And he never waves me off with talk of thus or such weather, but texts me one foggy night, like verse, like a prophecy. I still look for your moon, dear, she hides. That is a real text that I got from my neighbor, and it's like better than any poem I've ever written, and I'm not even mad about it. So yeah, the last poem that I'm gonna do for y'all is a poem, but it's also a spell. And I've never done it over the virtual ether, so I don't know if this if the spell will travel to California, but let me know if it does. Let me know if it works. So this is called A Spell to Conjure Wholeness. Once I discovered the secrets of the universe at my kitchen table, but they were too big for the hole at the crown of my skull. Once I was born, soft and full of wonder, a lump of clay in the hands of a child. Michelangelo once said he did not carve David, but released him from marble. Listen. Can you tell silence from the absence of voices? Can you prove it exists? Can you prove I cannot hold silence with my fist? If a tree falls in the woods without witness, does it pick itself up and try again? If you believe in astral projection, raise your hand. If you practice astral projection, raise mine. Now raise your hand if you're a human body. Now if you are a human body, and that's your hand, then what is you? Mind, body, body, soul, soul, light, light, dark, nothing, everything. An ink swoop, a keystroke, the curve of a hand, Genesis, inside and outside. Now watch. Mind, body, soul, light, dark, nothing, everything, inside, outside. Can you prove these boundaries of skin any more real than a hand slicing air? I do not have arrogance enough to call this poem mine. I have no proof I wrote it, that it wasn't already in the air here, in the spaces between things. The bend on a midnight highway, by daylight, starlight, palinodes of dawn, and the silence between two lovers. Listen. God is love, is God, 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 is love, is God. Child of earth, can you prove you are not perfect? That silence exists? That the breaking of silence is not the opening of a fist? You astral flower, you starseed, space dust, spaceship, you miracle, you cannot be mended, you weren't broken to begin with, you headlight sunset, you sun-soaked daydream, you brave explorer on this quest of today. I must tell you, though it hurts to heavy your load with truth, the promise of healing from loss is a myth. We are all shaped by absence. From our first breath on this earth, like air in your lungs was once shaped like the spaces between things. But the greatest myth of all is that absence makes less than a whole, that love unreturned is love lost or wasted. There is no beginning or end to the line of a circle. There's no me or you to the eyes of beyond. One day we will all cease to be something and become part of everything. It's not for you to decide when that is. Can you prove you're alone by yourself? Can you prove yourself to you? Can you prove you're you at all? And if you are, and if you can, then tell me how right now you have my voice inside your head.